Well, that clue was a little too easy, I think. Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. It is Genesis week. Really looking forward to this. Uh, I've been a fan of Genesis. Well, I guess I got on board around the time I was really getting into music in general, kind of early '80s, and then from there, it was only a little bit later I discovered the whole history with Peter Gabriel, and I think a lot of how people feel about Genesis, it depends on which era you really gravitate towards, right? They are pioneers in progressive rock in the '70s, and huge pop hits in the '80s. Uh, I I guess I'm one of those people who I enjoy all of it. There's definitely I have some preferences, but there's a lot of people who really love those hits in the '80s had no idea of their progressive past. So, and for ease of reference in this video, I'll refer to something from the Collins era, the Phil Collins era, or the Peter Gabriel era. Of course, Phil Collins was on drums through most of the Peter Gabriel era too. But yeah, obviously that's referencing the different periods of who was the lead singer, right? Peter Gabriel's lead singer, or Phil Collins' lead singer, or Ray Wilson. All right. So that's what we're gonna get. So today we're gonna rank 15 studio albums of Genesis from worst to best. Let's talk about those records. And then Thursday's video, we can get into live albums and compilations and box sets and maybe explore a little bit of the solo work of some of these guys. Not Peter Gabriel. I'm saving Peter Gabriel's going to have his own week down the road. But maybe we can talk about some solo Phil Collins and stuff like that. Anyway, I don't know. We'll figure that out later. But today, 15 Genesis albums from worst to best. A little bit of history. These guys started out late '60s, kind of school buddies. Started with Peter Gabriel on vocals and flute, Mike Rutherford on bass, the bass pedals, Tony Banks on the keyboards, and Anthony Phillips was the original guitar player, and he'll be the guitar player on their first two records. And they went through I guess several drummers in those early days. It's on their third record, Nursery Crime, where Anthony Phillips leaves, and I forget the name of their drummer, but he's gone. And you have Phil Collins come in as the new drummer, and Steve Hackett as the new guitar player. And that's sort of the classic quintet from the progressive years, where they really do their great, great progressive work. Peter Gabriel leaves for a solo career after 1974's Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So they're a quartet. That quartet releases two albums, and then Steve Hackett bolts, and then there were three, and you have a trio. And those three really kind of work through most of the rest of their career. They in the live arena, they're augmented by Daryl Sturmer on guitar, or actually he usually in live he'll play bass, and Mike Rutherford switched to guitar, and Chester Thompson, right? Thompson, yeah, Chester Thompson on drums, kind of taking some of the drum duties for Phil in the live arena through most of that era. And then one last record, Phil Collins leaves, and they get Ray Wilson in to sing on one record, and then that's it. That's the last record they have. So that's sort of the history in a nutshell, at least personnel wise. Um, yeah, those Peter Gabriel records, especially. Let's Why don't we take a minute and editor can entertain us with some pictures of Peter Gabriel's stage costumes from this era. That's some great stuff. Awesome, awesome stuff. Take a look at that. Yeah. All right. Anyway, can't get enough of Peter Gabriel's costumes from that era is awesome. Well, let's get into it. We got 15 records to talk about, so let's go ahead and get started. My so it's kind of interesting in this rankings. In some of these rankings, I do kind of follow. You watch some other Genesis ranking videos or look up some rankings online. I do kind of follow some conventional wisdom, but not always. I've got a couple hot takes. Okay, um, there's one record that is really well respected that I got pretty low, and then there's two records that I find aren't so respected that I've got kind of high. So I don't follow completely, but you know. But coming in at number 15 is for many kind of a consensus pick as their worst record, and it is their last one, 1997's Calling All Stations. Now, my bottom three I've got on CD. I haven't bothered to go find them on vinyl, but got vinyl for the rest. But these bottom three, I've got the CDs. Yeah, this one, it's basically Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford. I don't even know if I would really call this Genesis. They pull in a new vocalist, Ray Wilson, who was formerly with Stiltskin, I believe. There you go. And I don't blame this album on Wilson. It's not really his fault. His voice is good. I mean, maybe a little reminiscent of kind of an older Peter Gabriel's voice, but without a lot of as much character. I mean, he's fine. The material on here, it's not his fault. From what I understand, Banks and Rutherford had already written a lot of this before they even pulled in a singer. So it's not like Wilson had a huge input on this material. I think the problem here is one, nothing really stands out. I mean, it's pretty dull. And they don't really know exactly what they want to be anymore. I mean, are they going to kind of go back to some proggy stuff? Or are they going to try and still get stuff on the radio? And they don't really commit either way. And it's just sort of mush. Yeah. All right. Number 14. Let's go to the previous record before this one. 1991's We Can't Dance. Whew. This has not aged well, my friends. Oh man, yeah. The last one with Phil Collins on board. Yeah, it's bad. It's so dated. I don't know. Even when it came out in '91, I think it sounded dated like when it came out. I mean, there's some really cringy song. No Son of Mine is dull opener. Jesus, He Knows Me is some sort of hackneyed attempt to, talk about televangelists or whatever. I Can't Dance, I think, is a dumb song. There's some boring Phil Collins ballads on here. Driving the Last Spike. That's the only one I kind of like. It's 10 minutes. And you got to sit through kind of a boring first half, but then the second half when that groove kind of comes in, that's pretty cool. It's like the only thing I like on here, though. All right. Coming in at number 13. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, to the book of Genesis. From Genesis to Revelation. The debut, 1969. This suffers from a similar malady that the final one did, Calling All Stations, and that they don't really know who they are at this point. A little more forgivable here because they're so young and just starting out. Yeah, I'll give it this. There's no other Genesis album that sounds remotely like this. It's a lot of piano and acoustic guitar. Sort of almost sort of baroque pop. There's a lot of strings laid on, kind of baroque pop, a little folkish, kind of trying to sound like early Bee Gees or something. I don't know. It's just there's some things that stand out though. It's just I like In the Beginning. I like The Serpent. There's a couple tunes on here that are all right, but yeah, it's not progressive rock, and they just have not found their identity at all at that point. All right, coming in at number 12. They do find their identity here on their second record. Talking about 1970's Trespass. There you go. Where they have definitely decided they are a progressive rock band. Now, this is the final record with that kind of original lineup, or at least original as far as who's playing on records. Um, I the production on here is not great. It's a little murky, but they are really diving into writing these progressive, these longer songs, multiple parts. Looking for Someone, the opener, I think is pretty nice. I like the Peter Gabriel vocal on that. Dusk is a nice tune. I think the real standout here is Knife. That one rocks. But of course, there's a far superior version of that on the live album. We'll talk about that on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's almost like that debut was sort of a kind of a prelude, and this is really sort of the first album. I don't know. It's kind of how I look at it in some ways. But I've actually been listening to this a little bit lately, and it's growing on me. It's growing on me. All right, number 11. Now, number 11 is my first kind of hot take. Number 11. A lot of people, I think, like this more than I do. I've tried. I really want to, but I'm sorry. I gotta admit, I find it kind of dull. It doesn't hold my attention all the way through. It's got some nice Steve Hackett guitar on it. In fact, it's the last record he was on before he leaves the band. So I am talking about Wind and Wuthering, one of their two quartet albums. Was it 76? Yeah, 1976 when this came out. Yeah, like I said, I just, for whatever reason, it doesn't hit me. I know it really. I know there are a lot of fans of this record. In fact, there are a lot of people who think this is their last great record, but not for me. To me, the only one that it really, I kind of really come back to is the closing track, Afterglow, which of course is one that they would use a lot in concert. Afterglow's good, but yeah, I don't know. You're a big fan of that album. In the comments, make your argument, man. I will listen. Like, what's so great about that record? I just didn't do it for me. Number 10. Number 10. The next one after that one. And then there were three, which of course is their first trio album. Kind of a forgotten record in some ways. I mean, the definition of kind of a transitional record. I mean, what do you, it's kind of interesting. This was 1978. This comes out, Peter Gabriel left after The Lamb, and that was like amazing that they were able to kind of soldier on, and with Phil Collins on vocals and all that. In some ways, I think it was even a bigger blow when Steve Hackett left. At least, I mean, just that the musical sound of Genesis at its core, Steve Hackett was a huge part of that. And when he left, I mean, that was, in some ways even scarier for him, maybe. But yeah, this is definitely sort of this kind of a transitional thing. They're definitely still trying to hold on to some proggy elements, but they're starting to move into, maybe some little tighter arrangements, and I don't know if I want to say pop, but yeah, just some tighter stuff. There's some good stuff on here. I like Deep in the Mother Lode. That's pretty explosive. That's really good. Of course, probably the most famous song on here is the closer, "Follow You, Follow Me," which really did sort of look ahead. I mean, that is just a pure pop song, and probably their first one, really, in my view. Um, and I think sort of you know telegraphed a little bit the direction they'd be going. But this is an interesting record, and some worthwhile stuff on here. But they're also sort of scrambling, I think, to try and create whatever their new identity is going to be. Number 9. Now, number 9, I've got a soft spot for, but obviously it's still not super high in the rankings. I mean, it is. I don't know if there's any record of theirs that is more of their time, of its time, as in like when it was released. But yeah, I've got Invisible Touch. What was that? It's 86. Their biggest commercial success by far, I think. I mean, they had huge hits off of here. You want to talk about dated sound? Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I've got a kind of a soft spot on this. I remember because I really got into Genesis on the record before this, and so I was kind of anticipating a new Genesis record, and I was excited by all the hits, and I mean it was. Yeah, I think yeah, I saw them on this tour. I saw Genesis twice. One was on the We Can't Dance tour, which was terrible. Um, I saw them on this tour, and it was a great show. Um, I don't mind tonight. I know they kind of stretch it out just to stretch it out, but I kind of like it. I don't even mind. At least In Too Deep, I think, is a nice ballad. I'm not ashamed to say. I know hardcore Genesis fans like cringe at any of the Phil Collins ballads, but that one's all right. Land of Confusion was a great hit. That was fun. The title track that that has not aged so well. I mean, it's such dated '80s sounds. It's hard to get past that. But yeah, Domino I think is great. The extended Domino, which they always try to at least have at least one extended song on there, so it's sort of a throwback, trying to throw back to some of their proggy days. And the Brazilian, I actually really dig that closer. It's a great instrumental closer. So there's some stuff on here that I'm still kind of fond of, but yeah, it's dated. It's dated. All right, number 8. I go with 1980s Duke, which this really was, I think, their, where they really do sort of cross the Rubicon and go into a lot more of a pop direction. But man, there's some strong stuff on here. Behind the Lines, going into Duchess is great. Misunderstanding, that is a that is a killer pop hit. That is just a great radio hit. I mean, that is the template later of some of Phil Collins's radio hits. With the punchy horns and the. That's a great song. Heat Haze, I think is gorgeous. It's a it's a sort of a gem in there that people don't talk about as much. Turn It On Again. My God, I mean, you want to talk about just a perfect pop song. I mean, it's like that hooks galore. It's great. Honestly, it's kind of the rest aside too that to me doesn't really jump out at me as much. But I know there are a lot of people like this kind of in the Collins more poppy years. I don't like this more than I do, but yeah. All right, moving and back into the Gabriel years, I do have at number 7, 19 was this 1971's Nursery Crime. Their third record, where they really do, I think, find their voice or their sound. Um, of course, this is the first record with that classic lineup where Phil Collins comes in on drums and Steve Hackett on guitar, and it contains their first real masterpiece, of course, which is Musical Box. That song's still, God, that song is still so powerful. Um, but yeah, there's some other good stuff on here too. This I think they're really starting to really find their identity, but they really find it on the next one. All right, number 6. Number 6, I've got a real soft spot for because that's where when I first got into Genesis, it was some of the radio hits off of this. So yeah, what some people refer to as the Shapes album, but it's self-titled Genesis, the official title. I you know I watched some videos where people really slag on this album. I think that first side is really strong. I really like Mama. I mean, it's sort of got that same sort of really angry, percussion heavy feel of like Phil Collins's um, "I Don't Care Anymore," right? Off his second solo album, which is great. That's all is just a killer radio song. I mean, wow, that's just got such a great melody line in there. Nice guitar solo from Mike Rutherford, which I don't really say that often because I don't think Rutherford's that great of a guitar player. Really miss Steve Hackett, but nice solo on that song though. And then the Home by the Sea medley, Home by the Sea, second Home by the Sea. think it's fantastic. I love it. It gets a little more problematic on side two. Now, the good Silver Rainbow is a real underrated song. I think Just a Job to Do is kind of fun. The other tunes on there, Illegal Alien, that's bad. Uh, that was kind of hokey and cringy even when it came out. You remember the video? Phil and his sombrero and fake mustache. Yeah, it's as bad as you remember. But I don't know. That aside, I like I said, I got a soft spot for this one. All right, let's see here. That was number 6. So number 5, another one that for some reason a lot of people kind of slag on. As far as like Genesis, like more of the pop years, this is my favorite one. Abacab. I don't. I mean, I really don't understand why so many people don't like this. The title track. I mean, it's meaningless. It's named after the structure of the song. you know, like the A section, B section, A section, C section, A section, B section, which they then changed, so it's not even accurate for the structure. So anyway, whatever. But some cool synthesizer stuff on there. No Reply at All. Another like just that classic in a good way, kind of Phil Collins, with the horns and everything. Me and Sarah Jane's a nice song. I've always been a fan of Keep It Dark. I think Keep It Dark's a really good song. I don't mind Dodo and Lurker. A lot of people don't really like that one. Man on the Corner, I think, is really good. Another Record's good. I mean, the only stinker on here is Who Done It, which is terrible. Phil's doing that stupid ass accent on there. Anyway, but other than that, I thoroughly enjoy Abacab. I don't get the hate. All right, top 4. These top 4 are like classics. I think all 4 of these are amazing. So at number 4, I do have, so it will be the highest ranking Phil Collins era, and it of course is his debut as the lead vocalist, Trick of the Tail, a Trick of the Tail, yeah. Now, I talked about this. I kind of gushed about this on the 1976 video. So I had this pretty high in my ranking that year. This is an astoundingly great record. All the more amazing that they're able to survive the loss of Peter Gabriel. And I think I told this story in that video, but I'll tell it again here because it's obviously appropriate for this video. They auditioned a bunch of singers, and just none of them were working out. And it was kind of funny because Phil Collins was the one who was sort of teaching them like the vocal lines and the melody lines in the tryouts. And they finally just said like, Phil's like, I'll do it, and man, they don't miss a beat. I mean, I think the biggest compliment is you listen to this record, and as incredible as Peter Gabriel was, you don't miss Gabriel here. Um, I mean, I saw someone reviewing this in some video I watched where they said they could just they could hear Gabriel singing these songs too, which I think is a fair assessment. But man, yeah, Dance on a Volcano, just like just a strong opener announcing like, yeah, we're still here. Squonk is great. Assault, robbery, assault, and battery. That whole robbery, assault, and battery into Ripples, into Trick of a Tail, and then Los Endos. That whole sequence is just awesome. Yeah, I mean I can't say enough about how I admire these guys for sort of persevering after losing such a distinctive lead vocalist, right? But you know what's left if you know Genesis very well. This trio of records is these are 3 of the classics of all progressive rock. As strong, it stands up to the best of King Crimson or the best of Yes, Rush, any of your favorite progressive rock bands. These 3 records stand toe to toe with any of them. I mean, just classics. I I wouldn't have an argument, however, someone wanted to rank these 3, but this is this is where I put them. So at 3, I do have 1973's "Selling England by the Pound." That first side really is perfect. Dancing with the Moonlit Night. My, Peter Gabriel's delivery on that is just that sort of a cappella beginning just gives you chills. It's so good. I know what I like. Sort of the closest they ever came to kind of a sort of a radio pop song, for the Gabriel era. Great song. And Firth the Fifth, man, that guitar, that extended guitar line from Steve Hackett is just soaring. It's so stunningly beautiful. Not even that complex, but it's just gorgeous. In that kind of that end, that sort of extended ending on Firth the Fifth. More Fool Me, lead vocals from Phil Collins. So, kind of showing that he can do it. For me, the only reason I have this in the three spot out of these three classics is I, I don't love everything on side two like some people do. Battle of Epping Forest doesn't really grab me. Cinema Show does. I mean, Cinema Show is a classic. But yeah, and I guess since the Battle of Epping Forest is, how long is that? It's like, yeah, it's like 12 minutes. I mean, so it takes up a lot of the side. And for me not to really be drawn into that one, it's a decent chunk of that side. So I guess that's why I have this in the three slot. But make no mistake, it is a classic. All right. What do I have at two? What do I have at one? Well, this was tough. But in the two slot, I've got Foxtrot, 1972's Foxtrot. I mean, this album art is fantastic. check out check out Peter Gabriel's reverse mohawk in there. Isn't that awesome? This I mean, people remember this record because of the Supper's Ready. I mean, which is basically a full side, of this record. One of the epics of progressive rock. Just how many? Yeah, actually, it does break it down here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's like 7 sections or movements of that song. Just stunningly great. What Gabriel's singing about? I mean, I have the lyrics here. I still don't really get it all, but I never really understand what Peter's singing about in his Genesis days. Doesn't matter. It's just his delivery is mesmerizing. And yeah, Supper's Ready. But here's the thing: side one is awesome too. Yeah, I mean, Watcher opening with Watcher of the Skies, which might be one like the greatest use of Mellotron in all of rock and roll. And Get 'Em Out by Friday is amazing to me because Peter Gabriel. I mean, that's like a short play with all these different characters, and Gabriel does all these different voices in that song, and it's just phenomenal to me. I mean, he plays multiple characters in that song. Can Utility and the Coastliners is a underrated song as well. It's just, yeah, just awesome. I mean, if you want to argue this is the greatest progressive rock record ever, you could, you could, but my favorite Genesis record has got to be the Opus, the double album, concept album, Peter Gabriel's last record before he bolts. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Don't ask me what the record's about. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Phenomenal songs. This this is kind of a unique record in Genesis's output. Not just because of the length and the concept and everything. Gabriel, they were kind of working separately almost at this point. Gabriel was really focused on writing these dense lyrics, and so a lot of the music was, the other four guys, Hackett, Collins, Rutherford, and Banks, were just creating all of this music. And I'm going to be honest with you, in some ways, it's the music that really grabs me here. There's just so much diversity, experimentation, just brilliant stuff on here. I'm not diminishing Gabriel on here. This is Peter Gabriel's, masterpiece here, but I mean that the title track, the opening title track, just that rocks harder than anything I think in their catalog. Um, God, but then you get to fly on a windshield, so moody, and back in New York City. Just God, Gabriel's shredding vocals on that is so. Counting Out Time was a great single, actually. I'm gonna say, is that my favorite Genesis song? One of the most beautiful songs I have ever heard is Carpet Crawlers. If you've never heard that song, go listen to that. You understand. And on that one, it is, I mean, there's beautiful music, but Gabriel's vocals on Carpet Crawlers it's just stunningly beautiful always to me. God, I love that song. Actually, you know what? On some later live albums when Phil Collins sings that, he does a great job on that too. It's just a great song. But yeah, Gabriel's vocals on Carpet Crawlers, just how it, because there's not really any chord. It's just sort of verse after verse after verse, and just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And by the end, it's just this emotion coming out so strong. Yeah, the first record, side 1 and 2, I think are perfection. Perfect record. Side 3 and 4, you know, might be a little harder to get through. Although I got to be honest with you, I really appreciate all of it. It gets way experimental, with some of that stuff later in the record, but it still has some killer songs on there. It, of course, what is it? The Lamia is beautiful. What's it? Lily White Lilith? That's a great rocker too. I just, I this artistically and almost every this is hard to beat. It is just a brilliant masterwork. It's dark. It's mysterious. It's got rockers. It's got beautiful, you know, I don't call it ballads, but just beautiful songs on there. A lot of experimentation. It's just all of it. This is my favorite Genesis album. All right, guys, that was a lot to cover. I think I did it pretty well, actually, in about 30 minutes. So what's your rankings? What are your favorite Genesis records? What do you guys think? Let's talk about it in the comments. Let's talk Genesis. It'd be awesome. We can compare eras, whatever. Uh, and stay tuned, obviously, for our Thursday video where we kind of look at some of the other stuff here with Genesis, like live albums and comps and all that good stuff. So look forward to Thursday. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We really appreciate it. It helps us out. Like the videos and hit the bell for notifications so you are made aware of whenever we put out new material. And we'll see you on Thursday to conclude Genesis Week.